So in today's video, we're gonna be going over the basics of reading music for guitar. Now, this is probably gonna be a part one. I will do another part to this at some point in the future if you all want to. Make sure you drop a comment below saying part two if you want the next part to this video. But we're going to be talking about how to read music on the guitar, just the basics of it so that you understand how it works. Now, this is not sight reading. We're not going to learn how to put a piece of music in front of you and play it perfectly on the first time. That is a different skill from knowing how reading music works so that when we're doing things like learning about chords, learning about scales, analyzing solos from great guitar players. A couple weeks ago, I did a video analyzing a David Gilmour solo, and noticed some people didn't really know how to read, and that was a problem for them. So guess what? Rather than just complain about it, I'm gonna help you to deal with that in the easiest way possible. So without further ado, let's get right into it. If you want this document, check below after the video, and you'll be able to get your own copy of it. So, how to read music on guitar. So a few things here. Number one, a lot of you probably know that music is written on a staff. So the staff has 5 lines and 4 spaces. And the way that we figure out what note we're gonna play is by placing notes on either the lines or spaces of the staff. Again, some of you probably already know this. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. You got the treble clef, which is this curly looking sign here, and then you got the time signature. Okay, there's lots of different time signatures. The most common is 4/4, which means there's going to be 4 beats in each measure. So every time there's a line like this, that's a measure. So 4 beats of music. So first of all, we want to know how to read notes that are placed on the lines of the staff. Okay, so the lines, starting from bottom to top, is going to be E, G, B, D, and then F is the top line. Okay, so if you notice there's text written above there, it says every good boy does fine. So if you look at the first letter in each of those words, every good boy does fine, that gives you the pattern of letters that you need to memorize in order to read this. So E, G, B, D, F. It's pretty simple. So whenever you see any note that's placed on a line, you think, okay, every good boy does fine. You figure out which corresponds to which. Now, we can play these on the guitar too. Remember, this is for reading on guitar. So I am going to include the tabs underneath. So you can start that transition from tabs to being able to translate it into actual notes on a staff. So if you play the 2nd fret 4th string, that's your E. And then actually the open string is your G. The open 3rd string, and then the open 2nd string is your B. And then the 3rd fret of the 2nd string is your D on the 2nd to top line. And then that last F is actually on the 1st fret of the 1st string. So anytime you see these on a score sheet, you can play them there. There's also other places where you can play the same notes. We're not going to get into that because that's going to open a whole entire can of worms. Make sure you watch my video on how to memorize all the notes on the guitar fretboard, and that will help you to find some of the other places that you can play these same notes. So once you got the lines down, review that a couple times. Now we got to figure out the spaces. So the spaces are really easy. There's only 4 of them. The bottom one's F. This next one is A. The next one's C. And then the last one's E. Okay. So that's actually really easy to play here too. So F is going to be on the 3rd fret of the 4th string. Then A is going to be on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. Then C is going to be on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. And then E is going to be on the open 1st string. And actually, if you play those all together, it actually makes an F major 7 chord. Just a side note there. It's actually a really nice chord if you play all those notes together. So This one's even easier to memorize too, because all you need to do is memorize the word face. It spells out the word face, F-A-C-E. So we're moving along here. It's easy. I'm not going to take too long on this because this is easy. All you who think that this is too hard, man, I don't know what's going on. Like, it's really not that hard. It's just some dots on a thing with lines and then just assigning letters. There's only like 5 lines and 4 spaces. It's 9 things. Okay, so here's another really good way to look at it. And a lot of times people just end on this top part, the lines and then the spaces. And that's fine, but if you notice, if we combine the lines with the spaces, it actually all goes in alphabetical order according to the musical alphabet. So remember, the musical alphabet is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then that just repeats over and over. There's no H or any other letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So if we actually start on the lowest line on the staff, E, and we play line, space, alternating, guess what? It actually just goes up in alphabetical order. Look, so E, you go up to the next space, that's F, and then you go up to the next line, it's G, and then after G, remember there's no H, you just return back to A. The whole thing starts over again. So you get A, and then B, and then C, D, E, F. So it's really, really easy to remember if you also look at it that way. When you combine the lines with the spaces, it just goes in alphabetical order. It's nothing crazy. It's not learning a whole entire new language or anything like that. It's not rocket science. It's just the alphabet, which everyone knows already. It's actually only a fraction of the alphabet on top of that. It's not even the whole entire 26 letters of the alphabet that everyone knows. So let's actually play through that too. So if you play through that, it sounds pretty cool. So 2nd fret of the 4th string, 3rd fret of the 4th string, E, so E and then F, and then G, open 3rd string, A, 2nd fret of the 3rd string, B, open 2nd string, C, 1st fret of the 2nd string, D, 3rd fret of the 2nd string, E, open 1st string, and then F. So that covers actually all of the notes that are on the staff. But wait a second, Adam. You can play lots more notes on the guitar besides these. What about the higher frets? Well, now we get to the next part on the bottom of this page. So ledger lines are what covers that. So a ledger line is basically a temporary extension of the staff. Again, temporary. It's only for whatever note we have to write that's actually above the staff. And that's why I wanted to show you this thing that shows you that it goes in alphabetical order, because guess what? Once we go above or below the staff, we can actually go. We just have to continue in alphabetical order. So check this out. If we play the 3rd fret of the 1st string, that's a G note. And that G note is placed on the space right above the top line of the staff. Next, if we go to the 5th fret, we can have this A note here. So it's a ledger line. That's our first ledger line. You see that little tiny line going through the note. It's like a temporary extra line to the staff. And then you can place a note on top of that line, the space on top of that line, that would be B on the 7th fret. And then now we have 2 ledger lines. So that's a C on the 8th fret of the 1st string. And then we just keep going there. So it's the same thing. Like, even if there's like 10 ledger lines, what you do is you just keep counting up space, line, space, line, space, line, and going in alphabetical order. Now, if you actually do get into sight reading a lot, you're not going to get anything past this G here. So you look at that G is crazy. It's 4 ledger lines above the staff. So that's the 15th fret of the 1st string. So Usually, if somebody wants you to play higher than that and they're going to write it out, they're going to write what's called 8VA. So it just means, hey, play these notes an octave higher. And you have to know how to do that. But we're not going to get into that right now because that's a little too complicated. So notice one more time, it goes up alphabetically. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then guess what? We can also have ledger lines below the staff. So the first note below is actually not a ledger line. It's the space underneath the E, underneath the low E line. So if we go underneath there, we get D. And then one ledger line. So that's actually the open D string, by the way, the fourth string. And then if we go one ledger line below the staff, it's C. That's on the 3rd fret. And actually, 3rd fret of the 5th string. That's actually the first note I teach a lot of people when you're just learning the names of the notes on the fretboard, not necessarily reading music. And then if we go to the 2nd fret of the 5th string, that's B. So that note is just underneath that ledger line below. And now 2 ledger lines below is actually how you write the open A string on the guitar. Pretty neat. And then the 3rd fret of the 6th string is underneath 2 ledger lines below. So the space underneath the 2 ledger lines, that's G. Then 3 ledger lines below is F. And then finally, the absolute lowest note that we can play on the guitar in standard tuning is open E. So that's the space underneath 3 ledger lines. So in a weird sort of way, actually, the lower ledger lines on guitar are a little bit easier to sort of manage because there's only a few of them. We can't go any lower than that, whereas there's a lot of the high ledger lines that we can get to. So that's how we can figure out what letter and what note we're supposed to play by looking at what line or space the notes are placed on the staff. So let's go to the next page and cover just some basics of rhythm, okay? So we're not going to do too much with rhythm right now because that's getting more into sight reading territory. Actually, again, that's sight reading is performing something. Like I put a piece of music in front of you, you got to perform it right now. You got to make it sound perfect. But it's really important to understand how rhythms work just for your own knowledge. And then also because it's just going to help you count stuff when you're working on your rhythm and just, again, know how rhythm works, not even necessarily for sight reading. So this is a whole note. So a whole note is just that little circle. So a whole note takes up 4 beats. So if I play a whole note, it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to blow through this. So half notes, 2 of them fit in a measure, and they're half the length of a whole note. So those are only worth 2 beats. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the half note obviously looks kind of like a whole note, but has a stem on it. Then quarter note looks like a half note, but the note head is filled in with black. So quarter notes, everybody's got to know quarter notes, obviously. They just get 1 beat each, and there's 4 of them in a measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Now, eighth notes, we take our quarter note, we add a stem or a beam to them. So when there's a bunch of them next to each other, they're beamed together like this. But if they're by themselves, it'll just be one little stem hanging off. So these we count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. There's 8 of them total in a measure, but we don't start counting to 8 now. We just add an and in between each of the numbers of the beats in the quarter notes. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then finally, the last one we'll cover right now is 16th notes. So 16th notes are half of an eighth note. There's 16 of them that fit in a measure, and they kind of look like an eighth note, except now there's 2 stems on them, or 2 beams. So the way we count 16th notes is 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a And obviously, it's a pretty fast rhythm at a lot of tempos. 16 notes are going to be very fast. And you're not, most of the time, unless you're a really good reader and you're in a band or something that expects you to read, you're not going to have to read too many 16th notes. So, for every single kind of note, there's also going to be a corresponding rest. So, just because we're talking about notes and playing notes and how long they hold for, doesn't mean that we're going to be playing all the time, right? Sometimes we don't want to play, and sometimes you need to be told when not to play. So that's what rests are for. So whole rest, it's actually just like a little block that's underneath the line. And then half rest look almost just like a whole rest, except they're on top of the line. Okay, so it's very subtle to remember that. The difference between those. I like to think whole, since it's under the line, it's like a hole, like in the ground. And then the half rest kind of looks like a hat. So hat kind of sounds like half. Quarter rests, rather, they look very interesting. They look kind of like just this like squiggly looking 3 thing here. Very, very interesting looking, but that's what a quarter rest looks like. And then eighth rest, they look kind of like a little 7 with a little squiggly top part to the 7. And then 16th rest, same thing as an eighth rest, but they have an extra little stem sticking out of it, just like the difference between eighth notes and 16th notes. Okay, we're almost done. I hope I'm not losing you. We're almost done. One more thing that you have to get your head around is something called accidentals. Okay, so accidentals. So an accidental is either a sharp or a flat. So in the first 2 measures here, we have sharps. So a sharp raises a note by 1 fret. And then flats lower a note by 1 fret. Also known as a half step. Okay, so for example, if we play this A note here on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and then we write a sharp sign next to it, it turns into A sharp. So we move it up 1 fret to the 3rd fret. Now that's an A sharp note. Let's try with this F note here. So F is on the 3rd fret of the 4th string. So we write a sharp sign next to it. It turns into F sharp. Now, when you're actually reading music, by the way, the sharp or flat only lasts till the end of the measure. Okay, only lasts till the end of the measure. So, and it does continue to the end of the measure, by the way. So if I write another F after I already put an F sharp in there, it's going to continue to be an F sharp unless indicated otherwise as a natural. We won't talk about naturals right this second. So flats do the exact opposite as a sharp. So they lower the note by 1 fret or 1/2 step. So we take that same A again on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. We lower it by 1 fret. Now that's A flat. So you get that flat sign and that sharp sign. The flat sign looks kind of like a weird looking B, and then the sharp sign looks like a number sign, actually, or a hashtag, as anyone from the last 10 years would probably think it is. And then let's do one more. So D, we're going to turn D into D flat. So D is on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and we're going to lower it by 1 fret to D flat. Let's do one last thing here. We're going to read this super easy example here. So first of all, before we read any little example, we want to make sure we got the rhythm down. So the rhythm is a quarter note, and then a half note. So the rhythm's going to sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, because each of those quarters is 1 beat, and then the half note is going to be 2 beats. And then actually the next measure has the same rhythm: quarter, half. Okay? So let's figure out what these notes are. So this note here is on the 2nd line of the staff. So we got to think, every good boy does fine. Every good. Oh, so good starts with G, so that must be a G note. So let's write G there. And then we could think of the spaces for the next note here. So F, A, C, E. F, A, that's on the second space from the bottom, so it's an A note. However, I could also think just going up alphabetically. Because remember, I told you, if you go from a line to a space above it, you just go up alphabetically. Or if you go below it, you just go down alphabetically. So we got G and an A. So G is going to be here in open string, if you remember from before. And then A is going to be in the second fret. And then the next note is a space as well. So that one is going to be F. Because F-A-C-E, the first letter's F. So we're just going to write F there. Okay? So we're going to have G-A-F. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, let's finish this off. Guess what? We saw this note already. It was A. So start to try to remember over time. Don't always depend on every good boy does fine and face. That's a good tool at first, but as you start looking at more and more music, you want to just start to remember, like when you look at that second space on the staff, like that's just A. You just remember that. We don't want to depend on these tools that I've shown you in this video as a crutch. We want to make sure that we actually understand how it works and then start to memorize it. So that's going to be an A. Up. Now look, it looks like an A here. But what sign is that next to it? Oh, it's a sharp sign. So now it's going to be A sharp. So we're going to play A. And then we're going to raise that up a fret to A sharp. And then the last note, we didn't see that one before in this particular example. So let's figure that one out. Is that in a line or is it on a space? It's on a line, right? It's on the middle line. So every good boy. Boy starts with B, so it's a B note. So this is what this melody is going to sound like. Super duper simple. G, A, F, A sharp, B. That's it. So it's not rocket science, everyone. As you can see, this is pretty simple. You just need to get yourself started with it and understand how it works. Again, I don't expect all of you to be super good at sight reading so that I can put a piece of music in front of you and you play it perfectly right on the spot. No, that's not the point of this. The point is so that if we're learning about a scale or we're learning about chords, how to construct chords, we can write stuff out. And if you have a couple of minutes, you can sit there and at least figure out what the notes are so you can understand what's actually going on. So that if you look at a solo from David Gilmour, you can see, oh, he's playing this note, and this note. This is super important, and it's not going to make you better if you don't know how to do it. You're not cool if you don't know how to sight read. You're not superior to people who know how to read because you can play and you don't read and don't know music theory. No, I don't believe any of that stuff. So if you want to be the best musician you can be, you should get as good at all the musical skills that you possibly can. That's just a principle that I like to abide by. So if you want to get as good as you possibly can with your knowledge of the fretboard on guitar so that you can apply all of the stuff that we talked about and actually understand it in all 12 keys, be able to solo in all 12 keys, be able to know your chords in all 12 keys, be able to know your chords all over the entire fretboard, and just have a complete and total understanding of the guitar fretboard, make sure you head on over to jamsville.com and check out the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course, which I designed specifically to get you to a place where you don't have any more gaps in your knowledge on the guitar fretboard. You have all the tools at your disposal to be able to make the music that you want to make. And not only that, but understand the music that you learn. When you learn a solo from David Gilmour, when you learn a solo from Jimi Hendrix, you can actually understand what's going on. Oh, I see that this is this chord. Oh, I see that he's playing in this key. So that way, when you understand this stuff, you can actually apply it yourself to your own playing. You can't apply stuff to your own playing that you don't understand. Until next time, listen, learn, and jam.